Compounding Capital Group. And we have the pleasure of having Boomer, Mr. Cost Segregation Specialist here. He's been working on cost segregation for the last 8 years, done over 1,000 cost segregation, probably saved people millions, if not tens of millions of dollars. Boomer. So, Boomer, we have the honor to have you tonight and for you to present here and really flex what you do as well. We have investors that comes from all walks of life. And what we'll do tonight is, Boomer, I'll leave it to you. And as questions come up, you can ask questions on the chat, and then we'll have Boomer answer them, make it more interactive and fun. So, Boomer, thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me. Appreciate your time. So let's talk a little bit about what cost segregation is. Cost segregation is a complicated word. When most people hear it, they don't understand what it means. Basically, we are talking about accelerated depreciation. So whenever you buy a property, every single component of your property is all going to be intertwined together and depreciated over 27.5 years if you have a multifamily property, or over 39 years if you have a commercial property or an Airbnb. So what an engineered cost segregation study does, and that's what we are an engineering firm. We're going to break your property down into probably 30 or 40 or 50 different components, and we're going to place those different building components into 3 different buckets, into a 5-year bucket, a 15-year bucket, and a 27.5-year bucket. Now, your goal as an investor is to shorten down the life of as many assets as possible. So what we're going to do is we're going to take those assets from the straight line depreciation of 27.5 or 39 years, and we're going to put them into their correct and shorter class lives. For example, we all know that flooring is not going to last you 27.5 years. So flooring is going to move from 27.5 to 5 years. So the kind of things that we're going to be able to accelerate are going to be things like, in the 5-year bucket, it's going to be your flooring, your molding, your kitchen cabinets and countertops, your bathrooms, your window coverings, your light fixtures. Everything like that's going to move from straight line depreciation to 5 years. Your 15-year bucket's going to be anything like your parking lot, your landscaping, or any kind of exterior signs, fences, or walls are all going to go from 27.5 years to 15 years. The key here is that back in 2017, when Trump released the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, he said any asset that has a class life of less than 20 years is eligible for bonus depreciation that you can reap all in year 1. So it doesn't matter if we put something in the 5-year bucket or the 15-year bucket. Those are both less than 20 years. So they are both eligible for bonus depreciation, which is key here, because you want to reduce your tax liability, reduce your income, and then it's going to ultimately give you more cash flow. So cash flow is power these days. And we want you, the smart investor, you, the smart business person, to have more money in your pocket now to either buy another property, fix up a property, pay down debt, whatever you want to do. It gives you a lot more cash flow right now. So let's talk about what else cost seg is here. So a cost seg allows you to depreciate your property over a faster schedule, which is going to increase your annual depreciation, which will reduce your income, reduce your tax liability, and ultimately increase your cash flow. So let's look at this picture here. So this is a master bedroom of a property that we did a cost seg study on. Let's look at all the different components here that we're going to be able to accelerate. So if you look at the flooring we're going to be able to move to 5 years. Your window coverings, we're going to be able to accelerate. Your curtains, we're going to be able to accelerate. When you go outside, you're going to have the paved sidewalk, we're going to be able to accelerate. All of the landscaping, we're going to be able to accelerate. The outdoor fencing as well, we're going to be able to accelerate. So just in this one room and with sliding glass doors, we're going to be able to accelerate many different components that you're going to be able to fully depreciate and reap that benefit immediately in the first year. So one thing to remember, straight line depreciation is prorated. Accelerated depreciation is not prorated. So it doesn't matter even if you buy a property in December, your straight line depreciation is going to be very, very small because it's going to be for the number of days of the year that you own the property. However, everything that we move to accelerated depreciation, you're going to be able to fully realize that immediately in the first year. So kind of what I mentioned earlier about the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, this was a real game changer for multifamily properties and for accelerated depreciation. Prior to this, you were able to get 50% bonus depreciation. Now we were introduced to 100% bonus depreciation. So remember, any asset that has a class life of less than 20 years, you can fully depreciate those assets and reap that all in year one. So a lot of times clients will ask me, you know what, Boomer, this sounds like a great idea. Why didn't I hear about this from my CPA? Or this sounds too good to be true. This can't be real, what you're talking about.
That's kind of how it was when I first started.
Yeah, one thing you need to remember here is that the tax laws are designed for everybody. The same laws that apply to Apple and Google and Delta Airlines apply to you and me as well. So even if you have a property that's a couple $100,000, the tax laws are the same for you as they are to these multi-million-dollar companies that they have massive buildings. The laws are designed for everybody. So just going through this briefly, when it comes to real estate acquisitions, the jewel of cost seg is that it yields enhanced appreciation deductings. There can be astounding differences between using it and not. This is not going to produce more depreciation. Instead, due to the time value of money, you're going to be able to accelerate and front load your depreciation to get that now, which is going to give you more cash flow. The accelerated method is the IRS's preferred method. But unless you use one of the big four accounting firms, chances are they don't have engineers in-house to do the cost seg study. So it has to be outsourced to an engineering firm like ourselves. But the accelerated method is the preferred method. This does not raise any red flags. It doesn't do anything like that. We are simply going to take the most aggressive model possible following the tax code, but we're going to be able to give you as much depreciation as possible by using the engineered cost segregation method. So,
now, Boomer, why would the IRS prefer this method?
Because basically, a lot of times when a CPA does something, there's gonna be a lot of gray area. With us, we totally take out the gray area. So all of our calculations are going to be exact. So whenever we put a dollar value on your flooring, for example, our dollar value is going to be like $2,961.32. So it's going to be exact. Everything we do is exact. So what we are is we are calculation experts. So we're going to place an exact dollar value on that for what the depreciable basis is for that asset, and it's all going to be exact. So basically, when we take all of the liability and all of the responsibility off your plate. So out of the 25,000 studies that we've done, we have never once triggered an audit. If you were audited for some other reason, we defend our work 100%, and we've never had a single line item overturned. So these studies are completely bulletproof to you. So that's what we do. We're going to get all the most exact information, and then we're going to let the engineers and all their calculations go to work, and you're going to reap the benefit. So we're going to go through a case study here to kind of show you how it works. But basically, what you're looking at here, this is called a depreciation schedule. So this is going to show how your CPA is depreciating your property. So as you can see here, you have a multifamily property purchased in March of 2020, and the purchase was $635,000. You cannot depreciate land. So land comes out of your purchase before the cost basis that we study. So here the land was $100,000. So right now you have $535,000 that is being depreciated straight line over 27 and a half years. So you're going to get whatever it comes out to $11,000 or $12,000 a year from that over the life of the property. So what we want to do is we want to break that down and unintertwine everything that's intertwined in that one asset. So on this depreciation schedule, after a cost seg study has been done, you're going to have 30 or 40 different line items with an exact dollar value, an exact class life, and that's how you're going to depreciate your property. So we're going to, if you want to call it reverse engineering, we're going to do that for your property to make sure that you're not leaving any money on the table. So here is what a study looked like. So here was a property that we did in Arizona. So this property is an Airbnb property. So like I mentioned before, if you have an Airbnb property, it's going to be 39 years instead of 27 and a half. If the average stay is less than 30 days, it's going to be considered a short-term rental. And therefore, it's going to be over 39 years instead of 27 and a half. If you have long-term tenants, it would be over 27 and a half years. So you can see in the upper left-hand corner, we got your acquisition cost at $306,000. In the box below that, it says 5-year property, 7-year property, 15-year property, and 39-year property. So what we were able to do in this study, we were able to accelerate 11.9% into the 5-year bucket, 19.4% into the 15-year bucket. The remaining 68% stayed straight line depreciation over 39 years. So let's look at the hard numbers that directly affected this building owner. If you go to the middle column below this, the middle column says depreciation without analysis. So it's the middle column by itself on there. So the first number on that is $1,642. So if a cost seg study was not done, they would have had roughly $1,600 of depreciation expense for 2022 because it's going to be prorated for the number of days of the year they own the property. This property was purchased in October, so therefore they're going to get a third of their annual depreciation, which would be $7,800. If you go to the column to the left of this, which says total, instead of having $1,600 of depreciation, they have $97,000 of depreciation for 2022. So this is a drastic difference of getting all the depreciation that they can upfront now. A question I get a lot is, you know what, Boomer, this sounds great. Year one is going to be spectacular for me, but what about all the other years? What's going to happen to all of that depreciation?
Right.
We don't take all your depreciation. We only accelerate what the IRS allows us to, which in this case was 31%. So the remaining 69%, you're still going to depreciate straight line over the life of the property. So you can see here in that total column, the first year is $97,000. Every other year going forward, you're going to have $5,400. So you're still going to have depreciation every single year. So let's talk about how this directly affects a building owner. So this will go dollar for dollar to offset your income. So if you have $200,000 of income for 2022, all of a sudden you're going to have $103,000 of income for 2022. So let's talk about being a real estate professional or being a W-2. So if you are a W-2 and you either file taxes individually or you file with your spouse and they are a W-2 as well, and nobody's a real estate professional, then this is only going to go to offset your passive income. So this property here, which was 1234 Main Street in Phoenix, the depreciation of $97,000 doesn't have to stay with just the Main Street property. It can go to offset any kind of income in your portfolio that is passive. So any other properties that you have, it can go to offset that income as well, because all your properties are going to be aggregated together. But let's look at this. This property is an Airbnb. So there is a short-term rental loophole, which says if you manage your property, this can go to offset active income. So that is a reason why Airbnbs have been so attractive to real estate investors, because even if I am a high-income W-2 earner, this can go to offset my active income through the short-term rental loophole. So Airbnbs are very, very attractive right now, because if you have $200,000 of W-2 income, you can take off almost $100,000 of that, and all of a sudden you reduce your tax liability in half. You move to a lower tax bracket. There's many, many benefits for that, which are ultimately going to increase your cash flow. Now, let's say another situation here. Let's say that in 2022, you only had $75,000 of income, but here you have $97,000 of depreciation. Cost seg is not a use it or lose it. So whatever amount of that $97,000 you don't use will carry forward to 2023, 2024, and beyond until it's exhausted. So if you only need 75,000 of this, you're going to carry forward the extra 22,000 to 2023, 2024 until it's exhausted. Now, there is one cost seg study done per property. It doesn't matter if you are a single owner or if you're part of a 40-person syndication. However your partnership structure is set up, that's what portion of the depreciation you will get. So that's what portion of the pie you will get. So that's kind of a good barometer to go off of. So let's look at this property here. So this is the property that we did in Phoenix. So let's look at the outside of the property. So here you have a driveway. You have different kinds of landscaping. You have a little bit of a front fence in the walkway. Moving to the kitchen. You have a type of hardwood floor or linoleum. You have nice kitchen cabinets and countertops. You have appliances, all things like that you're going to be able to accelerate. Here you have a little bit of a drop ceiling. You're going to be able to accelerate that as well. A good rule of thumb to think about here is that a property has to be livable. So you're going to have roof, you're going to have walls, you're going to have a foundation, you're going to have HVAC. Anything that makes the property more comfortable to live, that's what you're going to be able to accelerate. So here we have different kinds of landscaping. We have nicer appliances, nicer kitchen cabinets and countertops, nicer flooring. You can go see in the dining room there, we have a light fixture, things like that. Those are all things that you're going to be able to accelerate. When you go down to the picture in the bottom right of the bedroom, you're going to have a ceiling fan and a light. You're going to have a window covering with the blinds there. You're going to have carpeting. Those are all the things that you're going to be able to accelerate there. And then when you go to the backyard, you're going to have the swimming pool. You're going to have the different kinds of pavement around the pool. You're going to have the overhang that gives you some shade in the summertime in Arizona. You're going to have the fence and the walls, things like that. These are all things that you're going to be able to accelerate. So just a good rule of thumb to think about. Anything that makes the property more comfortable to live, that's what you're going to be able to accelerate through cost segregation or accelerated depreciation. So
now, Boomer, let me backtrack a little bit, if
Yep.
that's okay with you.
Go for it.
I got caught off guard on the Airbnb, how you can accelerate it towards your active income. So let me get this straight. Just because we have some W-2 earners in here, just so I have it straight. If I were to invest passively, right, and I get say I invested 100,000, year one, your cost seg gave me back, say 70,000. Let's just say, throw a number out there in cost segregation, right? Are you saying that if I have an Airbnb on the side, me and my wife say we're both W-2 earners, but we have an Airbnb on the side that we manage ourselves, because of that Airbnb, that 70 grand deducts against our active income?
That goes dollar for dollar to offset your income.
Wow.
So it's a new short-term rental loophole, like I said, that is very, very attractive to real estate investors. So that's kind of why the Airbnb market has exploded. But yes, that is a way that you don't have to be a real estate professional. You can continue in your W-2 jobs, but it can go to offset your active W-2 income. So
I had no idea. Thank you for sharing that, man. Yeah.
That is indeed pretty awesome, because there's almost nothing out there that offsets active W-2 income. So that this is pretty phenomenal. And then also, Boomer, you said 39% on this Airbnb property you could depreciate.
So we're going to go through here and go through the example and kind of show you how we were able to accelerate it. But yeah, you'll kind of see different things about what made it so large. Because this one here was 32%. On a typical multifamily property, you're probably going to be in the 20 to 25% range. But basically with the pool here, the pool kind of boosted it up a lot more. But we're going to go through the different assets and different components and kind of see what it is. So now that you're talking about that, for whatever reason, you cannot accelerate tile flooring. No idea why, but you can accelerate any other kind of flooring except for tile. So if you have a property that has a lot of tile flooring, your accelerated depreciation is going to be a little less. Any other kind of flooring you have, I don't care if it's carpeting, if it's linoleum, if it's hardwood, you can accelerate everything but tile. So that's just kind of a good point to go off of whenever you're looking at different kinds of properties. If you're buying a property to kind of look at the accelerated depreciation, any kind of flooring but tile is going to be able to be accelerated into a shorter class life.
That's wonderful. And Boomer, we got a couple questions in the chat.
Go
here.
for them.
So the first question from Carlos is, what's the best time of the year to have a study done? End of the year after all CapEx projects are done, or when's the best time?
So basically, we like to begin the discussion as soon as you get an LOI on our property. So it doesn't really matter based on the calendar year, based on the time of the year. We more so want to be able to, whenever you get an LOI on a property, you'll send me the address and the purchase price and kind of, if you're doing CapEx, what that's going to look like. And then our engineers will put together an analysis for you, which is basically going to show you what your accelerated depreciation numbers are going to look like. So that is a good thing to do, especially if you're doing a capital raise, because you can show your investors, look, as soon as we close on this property, we're going to do a cost seg, and here is all the extra depreciation that you're going to get based on your investment into this property. So that's kind of how we like to do that. Now, after you close on the property, we like to come out there, because we're going to come out to the property and take pictures and all that kind of stuff. And we want to get on the property as quickly as possible, because if you're doing any kind of CapEx type stuff, it doesn't matter when your property was built. Whenever you buy a property, the depreciation starts over. So we all know whenever you buy a property, you're going to have old carpeting, you're going to have different like old things that you want to make a lot nicer, but the depreciation starts over. So that old carpeting, the IRS is going to look at being brand new. So if you're going to go tear out that carpeting, we want to get you depreciation on it before you throw it in the dumpster. Because as soon as you throw it in the dumpster, it's gone forever. But we basically want to get in there as soon as possible, get the cost seg study done, and then at the end of the calendar year, that's when we will update our report to show, okay, you bought the property here for $300,000, you put in $75,000. So you're basically going to get two studies done. One, whenever the property was purchased, how it looked like in the condition of when you bought it. And then at the end of the year, we'll update it to factor in all of your type of CapEx improvements. So we do not back up to the calendar year deadline. So our study does not have to be completed by December 31st. We are literally still doing studies for people on extension for 2022 right now. So, and a good thing to go off of too is that cost seg works on both new and existing properties. So just because you bought a property 3 years ago and you didn't know about cost seg at the time, you could still do a cost seg study on that property. You don't have to go back and audit, to amend your returns or anything like that. There is a change in accounting form which will get it all caught up to present day, but it'll pull forward all the money you left on the table by not doing cost seg and get you caught up into present day. So it works on both new and existing properties, but basically, I more so want to provide an educational opportunity to you. So at the end of this, you'll have all my contact information there. So as soon as you have an LOI on a property, if you have properties right now that you want to take a look at, we can simply have a conversation. Everybody's individual situation is different, so I don't really like to pigeonhole what things are going to look like. We'll look at the properties that you have or are looking to purchase. We'll look at your personal situation in terms of income and tax liability, things like that. And then we'll decide, does this make sense for you now? Or do we want to talk again in 6 months or a year, whenever your situation changes? So we basically want to keep an open line of communication going. And then we can kind of adjust as you go on your property. And we more so don't want to be a cost seg vendor to you, where we do the cost seg study, we give you the full report, we shake hands and go our separate ways. We more so want to be a partner within your tax team, because the savings you're going to get from your initial cost seg study is sometimes only going to be a drop in the bucket for how much you'll save over the life of the property. So there's a lot of other tax savings opportunities that are available to you. And right now, the tax laws are very, very building owner friendly. So let us use our expertise to be able to help you save money over the life of the property beyond just the initial costing. So the kind of things I'm talking about is if you are doing some improvements to the property, things like that. And if I can help you structure your invoices, you're going to be able to expense it. So I basically want to help you be able to expense as much as you can rather than having to capitalize things. So
Awesome.
it's kind of, we want to kind of keep an ongoing discussion, talk about the properties you're looking at, your current properties, what you're doing, and we can kind of help guide you over the life of the property.
That's great. That's great. Thank you. You know, going back to the Airbnb, that's drummed up a couple other questions, Boomer. One of them is from Joseph, another one's from Vlad. And their question is, say if they're managing, but they have multiple people on the deal, right? How much do you have to manage the Airbnb if you have a few partners? Is it full on? I mean, does everybody get active? You know, what happens?
So you're going to have to show that you're being active in it. Like, you don't physically have to go clean it. You don't physically have to do those kind of things. But you have to be an active participant in terms of the process of managing the property. You can't just put in your money, go back and sit on your couch and realize the benefit. But if you are actively involved in doing things, that's how you're going to be able to take advantage of the short-term rental loophole. So you don't even necessarily have to live in the same location as the property, but as long as you are actively managing the property and involved in the communication with the with the guests, as well as the people, if you're having people clean it, if you're having work done to improve the property, if you're doing all that kind of stuff, that's the kind of stuff that they're talking about, where you're kind of actively involved in it. But can you have multiple people that are involved in it qualify for this? Yes.
Absolutely. That's awesome. That's awesome. And then for the short-term rental, how much time do you have to, and I want to make sure I'm asking this question correctly, Vlad, how much time does the short-term rental have to be rented out of the year in order to consider a short-term rental for it to qualify?
So, like I said, as long as the property is placed into service by the end of the calendar year. So, I mean, I'll literally have clients buy properties at the last week of December. And as long as you get a tenant in there and you get a guest in there, you're going to qualify. So yeah, we can still do stuff like if you're looking at purchasing a property, as long as you get it done before December 31st and it's an active short-term rental, yes, you're going to be able to take advantage of that.
So hypothetically, I buy it on December 25th, right? We close on Christmas Day. And Jay said, I want to rent your place for 5 days. I'm locked in.
You're set.
Boom. All right. Thank you. Thank you. I think that's the questions for now.
Okay. So let's get back to this Arizona property. So this is how the property was broken down. So we were able to accelerate 36,000 into 5-year, 59,000 into 15-year, and then the remaining 210,000 is going to stay in the 39 years. So how did we break this up? So this is what we were able to accelerate into the 5-year bucket. So your cabinets, your moldings, your floorings, your wall coverings, your different kinds of lighting, any kind of specialty electrical or specialty plumbing, you're going to be able to accelerate. You have an exterior sign. Like I said, the appliances you're able to accelerate. The patio canopy, which I mentioned. You have an interior glass door, so they have like a sliding glass door. You're going to be able to accelerate that. The porch screen, things like that. Those were all able to be moved from 39 years into the 5-year bucket. So here's what we were able to accelerate into the 15-year bucket. So like I said, I mentioned the driveway, the sidewalks, the landscaping, the exterior fencing, and the swimming pool were all able to be accelerated. And like I mentioned, the amount that the engineers place on these different building components, they're exact down to the penny. So this is the exact number. So these things are completely bulletproof to you when it comes to being audited or anything like that. We take all the responsibility. And finally, in the bottom, the building structure column, you're going to have things like I mentioned. You have to have a roof. You have to have a foundation. You have to have HVAC. The property has to be livable. Anything that makes it more comfortable to live, that's what you're going to be able to accelerate here. So on this property, you were able to accelerate, like I said, $97,000 of extra depreciation in year one. So what kind of common misconceptions do I hear about whenever I'm talking to different clients? My property is too small. So it does not matter the number of doors that you have. It is simply the cost basis of your property. The cost basis is going to be your purchase price, excluding land, because you can't depreciate land. And you're going to add in any kind of renovations and improvements that you do. So if you buy a property for 150 grand and you put in $50,000, chances are this might make sense for you. So if your cost basis of your property is $175,000 or more, chances are cost seg makes sense for you. Like I mentioned earlier, it works on both new and existing properties. So even if you bought a property in 2020 and didn't do a cost seg at the time, we can do one now and pull forward all the money left on the table. You never have to amend or return. There's something which is called a Form 3115. It's the change in accounting form that tells the IRS I was doing straight line depreciation, but now I changed my mind. Now I'm going to do accelerated depreciation. We complete that form for you to give to your CPA to file with your taxes, but that is going to take care of anything about having to amend. And this is not going to trigger an audit. Like I mentioned, if you're audited for some other reason, we defend our work 100%. So basically, there's no risk to you on this. But if you have a property, doesn't matter the number of doors, if it's $175,000 or more, chances are it's probably going to make sense to you. So everything I talked about up to now all had to do with cost segregation. Like I mentioned briefly, there's other tax savings opportunities that are available to you. And let me just kind of touch on this now, but this is where we can have an individual conversation about your property and we can determine how we can help you save money beyond just the cost seg study. And one thing to know is that I'm not like an attorney where whenever you call me, I'm not going to start the clock and bill you. What we are doing is we are forming a partnership here. So there's no hourly rate, there's nothing like that. We're going to form a partnership. And when you call me, we're going to be able to have a discussion on your situation, how you want to break down your CapEx, how you want to break down your improvements, what kind of stuff you're looking to do, if you want to do it this year, next year, things like that. So we more so want to help you over the life of the property. So we'll touch on this briefly here. The tangible property regs were introduced in 2014, and they are extremely important for multifamily property owners. Every single year that you do any kind of renovations on your buildings, this is going to affect you. So after a cost seg study has been performed, our engineers are going to place an exact dollar value on that. And if it needs a replacement after that, you can write off its remaining basis. So whenever we had the depreciation schedule slide up there, there was one single line item which said multifamily property. Every different building component was all intertwined over the life of the entire of the property. So in this example here, where you have to replace the roof, that roof is still going to be intertwined with the building itself, and you're not going to be able to write it off as an expense. But after this cost seg study was done, the engineers placed a dollar value on the roof of $500,000, and after 2 years, you had depreciated $35,000 of that. So the remaining basis were $465,000. Whenever you take off that roof and throw it in the dumpster, that has a value. Because the engineers placed an exact dollar value on it, whenever you throw that roof in the dumpster, you're all of a sudden going to get a $465,000 expense that you're going to be able to write off that year. So because it was broken out and placed in its own individual class life with an exact dollar amount, therefore you're going to be able to write off the remaining basis in this example here. So had a cost seg study not been performed, no loss could be taken because they would all remain intertwined. The key thing to remember here is, I mentioned before, if you do a cost seg study and you don't use all your depreciation in year one, it is not a use it or lose it. Anytime you're doing any kind of improvements to a property, this is a use it or lose it. So if it is not done in the same year the work was done, unfortunately, it is gone forever. So this is why we kind of will have conversations periodically throughout the year, figure out what you're going to do. If an unforeseen circumstance comes up, we can talk about it and deal with it. But we basically make sure that you don't want to leave any money on the table for these situations. So we can talk about this more with the individual situation, but this at least gives you an idea of what you're looking at here. So
what you're saying, Boomer, is you guys are just, you're not just like a, hey, let's get this started and done at the beginning. This is really a true partnership. As things start to happen, we need to have conversations with you throughout the year to make sure we're getting things done right to maximize what we're doing.
So chances are your CPA probably does a very good job of filing your taxes, keeping you in compliance, keeping you out of audit. It is not their job to go out and seek additional tax savings opportunities for you. So that's why with people listening to podcasts, people going to events and conferences, people reading books, people are seeking additional education. This is how you are separating and differentiating yourself from other real estate investors. So like I mentioned before, unless you use one of the big four accounting firms, chances are your CPA doesn't have an engineer in-house to do the calculations for you. And unless your CPA has partnered with another kind of engineering firm, chances are they might not tell you about it. They might not know about it, things like that. So that's why we are not a CPA firm. We're not looking to replace your CPA. We more so want to be the third wheel with you and your CPA to help you make sure that you're taking advantage of all the tax savings opportunities that are available to you.
That's awesome. Thank you so much.
So what we have here is we have a picture of a dumpster. This looks like junk and trash to everybody. Everything that you throw in the dumpster has a value. So everything that's in here, if a cost seg study was performed before, you'd be able to write off the remaining basis of everything in the dumpster. So how do we get a cost seg analysis done? So basically what we'll do is that if you have an existing property now, I'll get a little bit of information on the properties, and then our engineers will put together an analysis for you. There is no cost to get an analysis run. We'll look at your individual properties and figure out, does this make sense for you? And if you are looking to buy properties, if you get an LOI on a property, let me know. I'm basically going to ask you 4 questions. When was the property purchased? What was the purchase price? Are you doing any renovations and improvements? And what is the address? With that, the engineers can put together an analysis. It's always a lot easier to understand when you have something tangibly in front of you that directly applies to you. So this is going to paint a clear picture of what your savings is going to look like. And then we can decide, does this make sense for me? Or do we need to wait a little bit to get this done? And if you own a property with a cost basis of $175,000 or $200,000 or more, we need to at least have a discussion and figure out, is this going to apply to you now? So here is my contact information. That is my cell phone. Feel free to call me, text me, email me. Happy to help out. Happy to talk about any kind of situations that you have. And we can decide how we can help you save money going forward, because like I mentioned, the tax laws are very, very building owner friendly. If you are on extension for 2022, it is not too late. We can still help you. Or if you have already filed and you're working on 2023, we can get ahead of the game here and figure out, how are you going to pay a lot less taxes for the current tax year?
Awesome. This was really good information, Boomer. The dumpster picture you showed us, right? I have a question on that.
Yep.
So of course, all the cost segs that we have done with you, we engage you when we buy the property before we fix it up. Then someone shows up, takes a lot of pictures, and then someone shows up, takes a lot of pictures after the work is done, right? But I don't see people taking pictures of the dumpsters and what we are throwing out. So how do we keep a track of all the old appliances, old ACs and mechanicals that are being taken out of the building? Is that something we as investors need to keep a track of, or how do you kind of manage that?
No. So basically, we have placed a dollar value on your appliances, on your flooring, whatever, on the front end. Mm-hmm. And then so we know what the value of that is, of when you throw it in the dumpster. And then we're going to cost seg your new stuff that you put in. So because we did the cost seg study and we were on site and got all those pictures, we're going to get it all on the front end. And then it's an easy process for the engineers to do their calculations afterwards, because we're simply going off of the exact dollar values that you spent. So it's exact after the cost seg study has been done. It's a fairly easy process. Awesome.
Thank you. Now I know we have one question from Jason about the STR loophole. STR loophole is seems to be the topic of the day, because I think that's pretty interesting, actually. So any insights on how Congress or IRS are looking at this loophole?
So when it comes to the accelerated depreciation and bonus depreciation, so everything from the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act being released in 2017 through 2022, it was all 100% bonus depreciation. In 2023, it's beginning to be phased down a little bit. So 2023 is 80%, 2024 is 60%, and then we'll kind of see what happens with the next election, if we're going to go back to 100 or how it's going to go from there. Since the Biden administration has been in office, they have given zero guidance on if it's going back to 100% bonus or it's being phased out or how it's going. So there has been zero guidance. We're simply operating off of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which was released in 2017, which, like I mentioned, for 2022 was 100%, 2023, 80%, 2024 becomes 60%, things like that. So that's what we're going off of. So there hasn't been any guidance in terms of what they're going to do. Anything that was a Trump thing, they don't like. So it's a matter of, are they going to cut off their nose to spite their face? Because a lot of these politicians invest in real estate as well. So it's, do they want to realize the benefits that are currently available, or do they want to say it was a Trump thing and we're not going to do that? So like I mentioned, we've gotten zero guidance 3 years in. We'll kind of see what happens as the election approaches and going from there. But we're currently operating off of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017.
So even if the bonus depreciation, let's say, goes away, right? Eventually it gets phased out. To make use of the accelerated depreciation, you would still have to do a cost seg study, right? May not be bonus depreciation, but still that short 7.5-year timeline and 15-year timeline.
Correct. Yeah. And even before the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, it was at 50%. So, yeah, so we're not going to go back down to zero, but yeah, I mean, if it's not 100%, it'll still be something. But yes, like you mentioned, having something in 5-year instead of 39-year is a big difference. So yes, that will always be there.
Awesome.
You know, Boomer, on the short-term rental side, say if we were to buy a duplex, you know, or even a single family for short-term rental, and you get the cost segregation done, and you hold it for, say, 4 to 5 years, and when you sell it, if you were to sell it back to yourself to a different LLC, or maybe to your friends or family, right? Do you get to do the cost segregation all over again?
So the IRS is going to hop on that. Like, you definitely can't do it to yourself, or any kind of related party. So that's going to be a no-no from there. So they're not that naive when it comes to those kind of things. So that's not going to fly.
Got it. Got it. That's good to know. And you've given us a lot of insights tonight. I appreciate you hopping on and being on with us. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And like I mentioned, there's my contact information. So reach out in some way. I'm happy to start a conversation, start a dialogue, and figuring out how we can help you take advantage of the tax laws, which are very building owner friendly. So don't hesitate to reach out. Hope to hear from a lot of you going forward. And even if you are not in the position now where this could benefit you, keep my contact information. And whenever that time comes, happy to begin a discussion and see how we can help you.
Thank you so much, Boomer. I'll make
Since,
sure to get your contact and send to everybody as well.
Absolutely. Since we have a few minutes left, can we take on a couple more questions? I think I have a couple more questions, which I think people might benefit from. One was about capital gains, right? So I understand that the depreciation can be used to offset other capital gains. So maybe capital gains from a sale of the property, you could use depreciation to offset that also. Is that true, Boomer?
Yes, that's correct. So like I mentioned, all of your rental properties are going to be aggregated together. So the depreciation from one property doesn't have to stay with just that one property. It can go to offset other passive income that you have. So yes, if you happen to sell a property and make $100,000 on it, the depreciation can go to offset that extra gains that you have. Yes.
Excellent. That means if I don't find a property to 1031 into, and I have 100K of capital gains, I can use the depreciation from other properties to offset it. So I think that's another really awesome advantage of cost segs. And then lastly, can you touch upon a little bit about depreciation recapture at exit? You know, if we exit at a profit, how does the recapture work? And Are there any ways to avoid that recapture or deferring that recapture from happening?
So basically, there are people say this sounds very, very great. Why would I not do a cost seg study? There are two reasons why you wouldn't do a cost seg study. Number one, if you don't make any money, because this is used to reduce your income and reduce your tax liability. So if you're not paying any taxes right now, this is probably not going to make sense for you right now. The other thing is number two is if you are fixing and flipping properties. So if you're buying and selling properties in the same year, this is not going to make sense because of the recapture component. I always tell people if you're going to hold a property for 3 years or longer, chances are cost seg is going to make sense for you. So what we put into the 5-year bucket in theory would, if you hold the property for 3 years, you would have fulfilled 60% of your time that you needed to hold the property to fulfill your depreciation, where it's fully depreciated under your watch. But the kind of assets in there are going to be things like carpeting. And we all know carpeting is probably not going to last 5 years. So whenever you go to sell a property, you're not really selling a single property, you're selling different components of the property. So basically a dollar value is going to be placed on that carpeting. So it's not going to be a 40%, it's going to be less than 40% that you would owe recapture. But if you're going to hold a property for 3 years or longer, don't let recapture shy you away from wanting to sell a property or wanting to do accelerated depreciation, things like that. So a good rule of thumb to think about is that as long as you are selling this property and you're going to use those proceeds to go into another property, a good thing is that as long as you keep on buying, the party never stops. Because all you would do is you would sell a property, have recapture, have capital gains, you would cost seg your new property, and that depreciation from that new property would offset your recapture and your capital gains. So do not let that think you. If you're going to get out of real estate and go buy a boat or something, yes, you need to worry about recapture. But as long as you are going to stay in the real estate game and buy another property, don't let that inhibit you from doing anything. So like I said, if you're going to hold it for 3 years or longer, chances are cost seg is probably going to make sense for you.
Makes sense. No, that is awesome. So you keep growing that snowball, if you will, and keep deferring your tax liability indefinitely as long as you continue to buy real estate, continue to depreciate your new real estate. That's pretty awesome. Great. I know that when I first learned about this, that was a big aha moment for me. That was like, oh, this is so good. It should be illegal, you know? So it's so good. So yeah, appreciate you sharing all the details, Boomer. This was really awesome. Great. Any other questions, folks? Perfect. I think Vlad's question was answered. Excellent. I don't think we have any other questions, so I think we can close it out. Thank you all for joining. Boomer, thank you for taking the time on a Friday evening before the long weekend. So I hope everyone has an excellent Labor Day weekend, and we'll be sharing this recording with everyone next week. So thank you all and have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you so much. Boomer, thank you so much. Thank you everyone for attending. Have a great night.